Thank you for pressing start on episode 84 of Underplayed, KZUM's indie video game podcasts. Today, we have two secret games, a discussion with Lucy Blundell, and a review of our featured game, 1000xRESIST. Here on Underplayed, we review indie games of all kinds, the games with small budgets but big hearts, the lesser-known experiences with imaginative ideas. I'm Bo Poe, and I'm joined by another. He got the platinum in Going Under. It's one of his numerous claims to fame. He's the ob to your ib in a cooperative game. He runs like a pony. He loves pepperoni. It's the one and only DiscoCola. What's going on?
There is a recording that begins and begins and begins, and a co-host that is feeling something that I am not feeling.
I'm doing just fine. My whale plushie that doesn't fit in the backpack.
Resonance.
Those are references to our featured game, 1000xRESIST, and it's a very special episode, DiscoCola, because we have a guest today, Lucy Blundell, aka Kinmoku, the game developer behind One Night Stand and Videoverse. They're going to join us to talk about their game development journey, but then also help us review 1000xRESIST, a game they picked from our list. So it's going to be a big episode.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a great discussion.
Yes. So we're going to keep the top of the show segment short. We're going to move on, but before we do, there are a few easy ways to support us. They cost nothing, and they take almost no time at all. We'd really appreciate you doing these things for us if you haven't already. One, give us a follow and a 5-star rating on podcast platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcasts. That will make us appear more consistently for everybody. 2, you can follow us across social media, and we have links in our show notes. And 3, sharing our podcast by reposting our stuff on social media and telling your indie game loving friends about us means the world. And as always, we love you. Thank you for listening. It's time for our secret games.
The secret games. Secret games that you're playing. Yes. The secret games. Secret games. Secret games.
In Secret Games, we each review an indie game we've been playing in secret since our last episode. We don't talk about what we're playing in advance. We're going to reveal a game we've been playing recently and talk about things we like, things we don't. And we'll start with you, DiscoCola. Let the mystery be no more. Reveal your secret game for episode 84 of Underplayed.
I am so excited to share with you this game. My secret game this episode ended up really synergizing with our featured game.
Ooh.
It is a fully voice-acted, narrative-driven sort of walking simulator from State of Play. My secret game is South of the Circle.
We can't change the past, Peter. But we can learn from it.
I thought you could handle it.
Yeah, I can.
Before we fool ourselves into remembering it too kindly.
We'll make a soldier of you yet, Pete, my boy.
Hello, can anyone hear me? Come in.
As you know, I have some friends in high places. I need to be absolutely sure we are on our guard.
Our only hope is for you to find a friendly out there. If you don't do this, we're both done for. You hear me? We are dead.
I think I have heard of this.
Have you? I have a special story later about how I found out about it. So yeah, from Steam, South of the Circle is a deep narrative experience of the emerging relationship between Peter and Clara, Cambridge academics involved in a political conflict. The story focuses on promises made in between career and true love, where our choices, burdened by our past, seem to be illusory. So early in the game, as Peter, we wake up after a plane crash in an Arctic setting. The pilot is injured, and while we are assessing our situation, we will have the choice to respond to what the pilot tells us by selecting certain sort of pictographs of sorts. These can appear like a green rectangle, or like a red shivering circle, or like this green dual-colored circle. And these will convey how we respond. So, for example, if you select the green rectangle, you will communicate something that is either honest or straightforward. If you choose the red shivering circle, it will communicate a response of like fear or panic or uncertainty. And so you kind of get to choose the mood with which you respond to dialogue.
You're not reading the words that are about to be said.
Right.
Just the emotion.
Exactly.
Okay.
And this is how we interact with the story, the occasional dialogue choice and a little bit of walking. So you can play Peter as someone with like really low self-esteem or with certainty. And there will occasionally be other types of pictographs you can choose between. And then there are about 7 of these that will result in something more concrete down the line. And as far as how this narrative unfolds, we jump back and forth between the present, adventuring the Arctic after our plane crash, and the past, including the development of our relationship with Clara and our academic journeys as we attempt to study and publish our paper about nuclear radiation in the clouds. Now, based on the subject matter of the research, you might be able to predict that this takes place in the height of nuclear tensions in the Cold War. So as a result, among other things, nationalism becomes a subject in this game as well. And that's the barest of bare bones for a story synopsis. The rest I really think should be experienced for yourself. So moving on, I really want to explain what I liked, what I didn't like, about one of my favorite narrative-driven games I've ever played.
Wow. Okay. High praise.
High praise. First up, this time I want to talk about music. Music's actually how I discovered the game, and not in like that algorithmic recommendation way or an article that I happened to read. Just one night I was gathering music for Press Start to Listen, KZUM's video game music program, and I was trying to play music from games that I hadn't played before or was unfamiliar with. And I did this by going to the Machinarium Remix album and clicking on the contributing artists. So in this case, I clicked on Ed Critchley because he did one of the remixes. And I sampled a few of the songs from this soundtrack, and he's the composer on it. And that's how I found out about South of the Circle. And I love the songs, and I happened to discover this right when I needed to start my secret game for today's episode. So it was kismet. And then in the game itself, like the music is really cinematic, but like not cinematic in a way that's subdued. This music gets tons of moments to shine, and just damn, it does it shine. It's so good. It's so pretty. Visually, this game takes a bit of a simplified approach akin to something like Virginia or Kentucky Route Zero. But it does take it up just a couple of notches. The characters have faces, for example, and body language is maybe a bit more animated. And I think it works really well for this level of narrative experience. I like how the pacing gets to be broken up with our jumps back and forth between time. Sometimes that can be really jarring in other games. And maybe there are 1 or 2 points in here where it is jarring, or maybe they overlap in a way that is not immediately like something we're familiar with. But it allows me to experience the parallels between our Arctic expedition as well as the parallels between our relationship with Clara in the past. And so as I see those parallels, it's changing and evolving like how I feel about Peter and how I feel about Clara, and changing my motivation to survive the cold. So really effective storytelling, even though we're jumping back and forth between time.
That's good to know, because jumping back and forth can be a little daunting to me. I don't always love that. But you're exciting me. I'm feeling a jealous game.
Maybe. This game is fully voice acted, like I said, and everyone does an amazing job. No notes. It goes a long way in making the narrative experience that much stronger. I love our cast of main characters in Peter and Clara. There is vulnerability, understanding, and partnership that I really value. There's also a significant supporting cast of various kinds of characters, and I love them as well. Not in the sense that I love each of them as people. There's a definitely non-zero number of characters that I love to hate in this game. And I think that's important in a story like this, to just have people that don't speak to your moral compass. And I get to experience, through the use of maybe the most important part of this game, I love that we get to make all these micro decisions as Peter to paint a picture of Peter that feels more like who we want to be.
Oh.
So when we meet, for example, when we meet Clara's friend who is protesting to achieve nuclear disarmament, we get those moments to choose whether we are either more disagreeable or passive with her opinions. You know, in this specific case, I do wish we were able to agree with her a little bit more personally. But, you know, another example in the case of our dude bro colleagues, we can choose to be more agreeable or more dismissive with their crappy takes.
So my Peter could end up kind of looking a lot different than your Peter. if I
Yeah,
played through.
at least if you like sat down and watched reel to reel, you know, how you played the game and how I played the game.
Right.
I think the ultimate result doesn't change, but you get a different version of Peter, essentially. And yeah, this is most importantly done with the professor. I find him to be like super manipulative. He's sexist. He's an elitist. He's a nationalist. These are all like some of my least favorite character traits. And it's really important to me to have the ability to buck what he stands for where I can. And all of that just makes me more invested in Peter because I get to see in him more of who I want to be. So maybe unlike our featured game, where I think there are other forms of media that could effectively tell the same story, I think the engine of the story are these little micro choices. And so I think this is a narrative experience that needs to be a video game to be experienced in the best way that it can.
Nice.
As far as things I don't like as much, visually, the character models can kind of clip through the floor if you're on a slope. I have loads of forgiveness for this kind of thing, and I really don't think it's a big deal in a narrative game. But there will be times where character models are like literally knee deep in the ground. So it's just kind of like, that's what my eye is going to when it's happening.
Okay.
Not a big complaint. Another thing, some of the Arctic sections are just a little bit too long. And that's the point, but it's just a little bit too long. Not by much, just a little. And while I had massive praise for all our decision moments, there is an important moment at the climax of the game, and it kind of had me second guessing all of my decisions up to that point. Like, based on what was happening, what I was witnessing, I was like, oh, there must be another ending, another way in those 7 or so important moments to achieve a different ending.
Mm-hmm.
And without getting too into it, because I really want people to experience this game, when you get to that moment, and you'll know it when you get there, it basically plays out the same no matter what. So what I would say to new players is just experience it for what it is. Play Peter the way you want to play Peter. That does mean that if you didn't hear this podcast and were curious about how to change the ending, you might walk away with a bitter taste in your mouth because you went back and spent all that time to ultimately not really change anything. So my recommendation is to just play Peter the way you want to.
Okay. It's good to know.
Yeah, because I don't want you to walk away from a second playthrough just like, I don't understand what I did wrong. So either way, after learning that, the ending afterward is still something that I loved. So I'm a little bit conflicted about that climax, but everything else around it was superb. In the end, this is a game that affected me on an emotional level that I could not have anticipated when I started. You know me, I prefer my action games, and narrative games don't always quite resonate with me as much as I wish they did. But not since Ghost Song have I been more invested in the outcome of our characters.
Wow.
If you follow me on Bluesky or are in the unfortunate position of being messaged by me at 2 a.m. like Bopo was, you'll be able to track about the time I finished this, because this game really did hit me in the feels. Not only that, but among all of the narrative-driven walking simulator-like games I've played, I think this makes the best use out of being an interactive medium. The only thing that really holds it back at all in my book is that replaying it probably would have been disappointing. And because of that, I really only need to play it once, which is maybe a shame. And as a result, I give this a 9.0 out of 10.
Wonderful. Wow. I am so excited to try this. This might be in my backlog. I might have gotten it on a sale or something, and it's like just way deep in the backlog. So I don't know that I would have picked it anytime soon. For games that are set in a particular time in history, I'm always interested in how much the game does to paint the picture of those events and maybe inform and educate on those time periods. I think of one of my past secret games was 1979 Revolution Black Friday.
I thought about that while I was playing this.
Okay, which told us about the Iranian Revolution, and I learned a lot from that game. So are you learning a lot about the Cold War from this game?
So I don't know how much of this is factual. So I'm going into it with the assumption that it is. And with that assumption in play, yes, I am learning, like, what's a good way to say this? We're Americans. You know how Americans can be. We don't really pay attention to what's going on if it doesn't serve our interests.
We're ignorant.
Yes. Yeah. And so I'm learning how other players maybe were behaving during this conflict, air quotes.
Right. This tension.
That I didn't know, but I'm not necessarily surprised about either.
Yeah.
So just like how certain nations are acting.
It's sort of filling in the corners of what you already understand, I bet. Like, I understand the two big sides of things, but there were global implications too. And I could make assumptions, but I don't remember learning about that stuff in school.
Yeah.
You know, I don't remember researching that on my own.
Generally know who is allied with who, but that doesn't mean that, people aren't up to stuff. And so based on the ending of this game, I learned something.
Okay, sweet. Well, I think that's all I have curiosities about. I really want to play this now. And you had messaged me late at night saying, okay, I'm 10 minutes in. I think you would love this. Okay, I'm 30 minutes in. I think you would really love this. So it's probably going to be a front runner for my jealous game of the season.
Yep.
Amazing. Where can you play South of the Circle?
South of the Circle is available on several platforms: PC, Mac, iOS, Xbox One, Xbox Series, Nintendo Switch, Apple Arcade, PS4, which is where I played it, and PS5, which is where I'll get a second stack of trophies in the future.
Amazing. It is time for my secret game. My secret game is one that I've mentioned on our show. When I went to PAX East, I went to the booth for this game and came away really excited for the release of it. It's now out.
Can I guess?
Yeah.
Is it Fresh Tracks?
My secret game is Fresh Tracks.
Heckers.
Once upon a rhyme, as we say in Norwin, the story song of a champion was about to begin.
Well, well, well. Another body for the grave.
This was not the end of Sky's journey, only a new beginning.
Oh, I can't believe they chose us! We're going to have so much fun.
So, Fresh Tracks is a 2025 rhythm action game developed and published by Buffalo. And I got to talk to the folks at the Buffalo booth at PAX East. They were super nice.
Buffalo booth.
They were super nice, and they made an appearance in our PAX East episode. If you go back earlier in our feed, you can listen to that. The game synopsis from the Steam storefront reads, quote, "Jump, dodge, and fight to the rhythm of the gods in this thrilling music action game on skis. Take on obstacles and menacing enemies as you ski further into the darkness that has befallen the snow-covered land of Norwin." End quote. I want to thank Evolve PR for providing a key to Fresh Tracks. I saw that they were doing a campaign. They were very kind to provide a key for the game, and I got to stream it as well, and I had a blast. But before I get to things I like, I just want to say that in this game, it takes place in the snowy region of Norwin, where there was once no song, but from the heavens emerged these mythics, these beings by the names of Sogvar. a warrior type who favored heroes. There's Fars and Dram, masters of dramatics. There's Mar, the queen of terror, and there's Coda, the voice of inspiration. And they brought story songs to the world, but Mar seized control of the land and the melodies began to wither. So you play as a champion named Sky, whose mission is to bring the songs back. And you do this in this roguelite style of playing songs on tracks and swinging a sword and jumping, leaning, crouching, etc., your way through obstacles that come at you. This is in the first person. The songs explore all kinds of genres. There are 28 different tracks in the game. They are genres such as pop, house, hip hop, hard rock. There's even Mongolian throat singing, which we've talked about before. And as you progress through the levels, you can find collectibles called whispers that let you buy upgrades during your run. And there are echoes that allow you to buy unlockables between runs. You can buy things like different kinds of skis that give you different passives. You can buy items like consumables to use during your runs. You can find new swords to swing that give you a different ability. And you sometimes face boss stages. And when you beat them, you unlock a new mythic to join you. And they add their own commentary to the world. And they also give you their own versions of the songs. And so your goal is to restore the land of Norwin by making your way through all the stages and unlocking more and more mythics. This game is very intense. There's a lot of swinging. There's a lot of reacting. There's a lot of just moving to the beats.
Yeah.
And what I loved is that the music is so fun and diverse. I love the music in this game. There are different versions of songs through the various mythics that join you. And a lot of times the action of the gameplay will mimic what's going on in the song. So there's a song where, you know, the lyrics of the song might say hop, 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 and you're actually doing a jump, jump, jump to the rhythm of that. And the way you lean and crouch is timed so cleverly to the musicality of the stages. I also really love the very clean winter-themed style. It feels like one of those games that's winter through and through, kind of synergizing with South of the Circle.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just love how this game looks. I also really like the options for letting the player customize their runs. You can equip the different mythics. You also get rhythmics, which are active skills you can use when you've built up a meter. And you build up that meter by doing perfect timing with swings on things. And this can allow you to, for instance, heal as you get hit. And if your health bar depletes, then your run ends and you have to start over. There's a rhythmic that lets you use your built-up energy to heal back some lost health. So that really gives the player some options and it rewards you for playing well. So I really like that. Then I get to some things that I dislike. Getting further into a run can involve a lot of time investment. Sometimes you're spending 30 or 40 minutes to get to the spot where you maybe last died. And you can sometimes get to that end of that run to the song that you died on, and you might not make a lot of progress because things get really challenging. But you can practice individual songs in a separate mode once you find them. You just have to take the time to do that and then practice it, and then you feel prepared to maybe get past that song when you get there. But you do have to spend all that time getting to the spot where you died. There are shortcuts that allow you to skip past boss stages at the expense of maybe not getting an upgrade that you would have otherwise gotten for your run. So it's making your run harder. And then songs and tracks can vary according to your mythic that you have equipped, but sometimes there's this repetition of hearing the same earlier songs a lot if you're doing lots of runs. And so that repetition started to set in for me, and I would go, okay, here's this song again. This is maybe like the 5th, 6th time that I'm hearing it. And so the luster of the songs can sometimes fade a bit. And then I actually have not quite finished this game yet because it gets very dang hard.
It looks it.
And I found doing multiple runs to be fatiguing. So I could only play a few runs in a session before I started to feel a little, not motion sick, but just kind of my senses were activated.
The room is still like moving in your peripherals.
A little bit, yeah. It is a lot on the senses, especially the visual sense. So I can't play this game in long stretches, but I think Fresh Tracks is a great game for rhythm fans. The music's awesome. Each run is a great length, but for me, it works better in short bursts than for long play sessions. Fresh Tracks for me is an 8 out of 10. I know some people who have been having even more fun with it than I have. I really like it. I recommend it to pretty much anyone who doesn't mind a rhythm game in the first person. I did have a couple people I talked to who were watching me play, and they said, I personally might get motion sick playing a game like this, but I like sort of glancing at you playing here and there. So yeah, it's super great. Feels great to play. And I'm just so excited for the Buffalo team. So yeah.
Cool. With games like this, certain actions can sort of be automated. I'm guessing, just looking at this, that the only thing that you are really not controlling is just the rate and speed at which you are traveling. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, you don't set that tempo, and I think if you could control that, that would throw off the timing of the songs. Everything's very intentionally placed. So yeah, you're not speeding up or slowing down necessarily, at least in what I've played.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, this looks like your version of Thumper, perhaps. Maybe not quite as hard. I don't know, but
I think Thumper's probably harder. But the hardest stages in this game, I don't know if I'll ever be able to play them.
Yeah, there's just, at a certain point, this is one of those kind of games where it's just like, there are people that physically probably cannot perform the inputs to finish this.
Yeah. So, and there are difficulty levels. I think they mostly affect like how much you're damaged or something. I played on the second easiest one, I think. So the game does give you like a little bit more padding and cushion if you want to play on the easiest difficulty settings. So that could be a way in for people who feel a little daunted by this. But yeah, otherwise, I recommend listening to the music at the very least, if you can find that somewhere. I think it's really good. And cool. I'm very impressed with the diversity of tracks in here.
Yeah, the name alone is just like, wow, why haven't we thought of that already? But like,
yeah, it's a really cool idea. And if I didn't mention it, it's playable on PC, PS5, which is the version I played in Xbox Series. And those are our secret games, South of the Circle and Fresh Tracks. Let's move on to our discussion with Lucy Blundell, this episode's special guest. We're so excited for this guest we have planned. They made Videoverse and One Night Stands, a crafter of stories with lots of appeal and plenty of emotions that you want to feel. So say hello to the game dev Kinmoku. Let's get to know you, Lucy Blundell. How's it going?
Oh, that's such an awesome intro. Thank you.
You're welcome. Welcome to the show. We appreciate you doing this. I was a huge fan of Videoverse when I played it for our last season. It's one of my favorite narrative indie games. And we've been talking to some indie game devs on our show periodically. We had the idea to have you on the show, and it's just so special to have you here. So welcome.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's really an honor to be here.
Oh, that's great. So, Lucy, can you give listeners some quick pitches about your games? You've got One Night Stand and Videoverse, and if you have any other projects you want to highlight, or anything else you've made.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, at first glance, both games look completely different. But One Night Stand is what I made in 2016. It was my first released game. And it was originally made for a game jam, NaNoWriMo, which is a month-long visual novel game jam. And then when I released it, it kind of exploded. Like a load of YouTubers played it. And then I decided to develop it into a full game. So it was in development for another 5-6 months. And it's a game about waking up after having a one-night stand. And you're hungover, you're disorientated, and there's this complete stranger lying next to you, and you've no idea how you got there. And you start kind of like looking around the room, exploring, trying to find hints and clues, a little bit of a mystery game. But you can also just try and get out of there as well. Like, you don't have to try and find out who she is if you don't want to. You can just try and get out with your dignity intact. But in total, there are 12 endings. And if you get them all, you will find like kind of the truth of what happened. And then over the years, because of its popularity, I managed to add several more languages to it. So I think it's in 10 different languages now.
Wow.
And there's also a console version, and there was a physical version, like a limited run on PlayStation 4 as well.
Oh, I don't know if I knew that.
Wow, that perked up Disco's ears.
I'm a big physical collector.
Oh, well, I have a few copies left. If you want one, I can send you one.
I won't say no.
Oh my
goodness.
goodness.
No, like they're just sitting there on my shelf.
So kind. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. That's awesome. And then can you tell listeners about Videoverse as well?
Yeah. So then Videoverse came out 2 years ago in 2023. And that was in development for just over 3 years. So Videoverse is a decision-based narrative adventure game that's set in this fictional video game era back in like 2003. It's quite retro and nostalgic, and very much inspired by Miiverse. It's a game about like character development, friendship, and love. And you play as a young teenage boy called Emmett. And he is like a big video game fan, but he's also an aspiring artist. And you get to kind of choose your path with him throughout the game, whether he's more kind or cocky, or whether he's more lawful, or, you know, he can become a bit of an online troll as well if you want. But it's generally like, it's a bit of a nicer experience if you're kind of on Videoverse, if you like try and report trolls. And you also like can form more friendships, get closer to people, and try and make Videoverse just a nicer place. And then there are a few different endings. There's a lot of teenage drama. It's very hard to talk about this game without spoiling it. But there's a lot of like video game references. I recommend it for anyone who's like a fan of video games. And there's also like some like corporate conspiracies and little like, you know, things to find in there. And there is a Japanese version translation like in development at the moment. It is very, very close to being done, but I can't quite announce when it's coming yet.
That's
but
awesome.
Please stay
Great.
tuned for that.
All right. Great luck with the rest of that. Sounds like you're almost there.
Thank you.
Even though the game takes place in the early 2000s, it definitely feels like it has a lot of themes that relate to things that gamers and other online communities experience today. A lot of the themes feel timeless. That's something that I found really immersive and really engaging about the game.
I didn't play Videoverse yet. I did play One Night Stand, but just the way that you and Bopo have described Videoverse, it's like, oh, in 2003, you know, I was online in like the Mega Man forums all the time, and I was aspiring pixel artist. You know, that didn't go anywhere, but so it's quite paralleling, you know, what I experienced just on its surface, at least.
Yeah, it was very much inspired by my time on like DeviantArt, fan forums, like Sailor Moon forums, Final Fantasy forums. And then, you know, people will be on there sharing their fan art, and it's just really cute. And obviously there's the Miiverse element as well to it. And it does, at times, the game does cheat a little bit, where there are some like more modern day references and quality of life features just to make it appeal to an audience of today. So it's not like too clunky or like old in design or anything.
Right. Yeah. We're not all stuck with like dial up, you know.
No, there's no there's no screeching when you log on.
So Videoverse tells a story of relationships and online communities and gaming culture, all of which are powered by the characters. You had mentioned some of the forums, but did any of your real life connections inform how you wrote the characters of the game?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm someone who's been like kind of chronically online since an early teenager, really. And I think that started with like the forums I mentioned, but also like MSN Messenger. You get home from school, you'd be like straight on there, talk to your friends that you were hanging out with, changing your status with like all your favorite song lyrics.
Yes.
All that kind of stuff. I was also quite obsessed with like chat rooms. I really liked Habbo Hotel. If there was like a chat room where there was like little characters you could like little avatars you could walk around with, I used to love that. And then when I got a little bit older, it became like World of Warcraft. I was someone who was pretty obsessed with that. It got to a point where I was like a guild master, and I was like running raids and like chatting to my friends, and some of them are still like really close lifelong friends. And yeah, like I feel like the internet has just always been a part of my life, and I really feel like with Videoverse I was writing with like my strengths, really. Like it was just very, very natural for me to like write these characters and think of, oh, this person's like that friend I had on World of Warcraft, or this was like, and even in some cases the trolls, it's like, well, they're just internet comments. You could probably find a YouTube video and see like some really bizarre response to something, and I'm just always inspired by like pretty much anything I see. Yeah.
Your story there really shows how your level of interaction with people online can evolve over time, but it's nonetheless very important and formative.
Yeah, for sure.
Can we take a step back and have you tell us about how you got started in game development and how Kinmoku came to be?
Yeah, so I think I've been gaming since I can remember, really, like 3 or 4 years old. I have an older brother, so I was always seeing him game, and I just really wanted to play games. And we had an Amiga, and I think the first game I played was Lemmings.
Wow.
Which I still really love. I think it's a great game.
For those unfamiliar with the Amiga, that I don't know much about it, but the sound chip on the Amiga is really impressive for its time.
Yeah, it's really nice, and I think it had really good graphics as well for the era. There's like a very strong community even to this day for like Amiga fans, which my brother is still really into, which is really cool.
Oh, cool.
But I did move on to like the Mega Drive a few years later, and the PC as well. So I remember when my parents were like, well, we're going to get a PC now. We're going to sell the Amiga. I must have been about 6 years old, 6 or 7. And I bawled my eyes out. I was so upset. I was like, you can't get rid of my game.
Why can't we have both?
Yeah, exactly. I was like, but games on the PC, they're so expensive. And on the Amiga, we were getting like a load of demo discs, and we have friends who we could swap with and stuff. So I was really upset about it. But I eventually, we got the PC, and I started playing The Lion King, which a lot of millennials, like, we played that game really, really hard.
Yes.
But then, yeah, like I got the Mega Drive. I played a lot of games on that. Like started playing like Sonic and Streets of Rage, and then later on it was the N64. So that was like my first Nintendo console. And I think a very like monumental point for me really falling in love with games was when I played Final Fantasy VII. And that was like the life-changing moment where I'm like, wow, games can do this. Like they can tell these epic stories. And I didn't really realize it back then. Like I wanted to do that, but I think that's when that spark kind of was starting. But yeah, like skip forward several years, and I graduated university as a animator, and at the time, like animation in England was a lot of studios were closing down, and we had the recession in 2008. And I graduated just a year later. So it was kind of difficult to find work. But I got a job a few months later at Chilingo, who are a mobile games publisher. And they published the original Angry Birds and Cut the Rope. And I was there as a graphic designer. And at the time, like this publisher was really small. It was like, I think it was like less than 10 people when I started. So I was kind of doing all kinds of jobs, like doing graphic design, like skinning. They had a social network called Crystal, so that was like some experience I could put into Videoverse as well.
Yeah.
This was before like there was like Apple Arcade and all these kind of things that we have now. There was that. There was like magazine adverts I'd design. I'd do App Store icon design, screenshot design, sometimes like event booth design. There was even a time where my bosses came to me and were like, "Oh, we'd love you to design a plushie of one of the Angry Birds." And I'm like, "That is." I finally put my foot down. I was like, I don't know how to design plushies. Like, this is
It sounds
insane.
hard. Yeah.
I think a lot of artists have had this thing where, people are like, "Oh, you're an artist. You can do all these things."
Right. You have a big toolbox and you can just do anything, right? I work with graphic designers and they get strange requests all the time. And I make videos for my job and I always get requests about, hey, since you know how to make videos, can you also do this? And it's like, well, I could learn, but you're probably better going to somebody who specializes.
It's like, oh, can you make this cool motion graphic for me real quick? I'm like, I can, but no.
You might not like it. I can do this instead. So, yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of that. But I was there for 5 years, and we were like publishing like 1 or 2 games a week, these mobile games.
Oh.
So I think by the end of it, I'd worked on over like 200 games.
Wow.
And most of them were indie games, but there were also bigger games. Like we had like a He-Man game, a Superman game, an E.T. mobile game. So we got to work with like bigger IPs as well. But it gave me a lot of experience and confidence, and I learned a lot about game design being there. And I was also just able to save up a lot of money and then be like, right, I'm going to take that leap, that risk, and try indie development. And that was 10 years ago now. So
Wow.
I've been doing this for just over 10 years.
Congratulations.
And I
Wow.
can't believe, thank you. I can't believe it's been this long at all. I really can't. But yeah, like it's been working out for me, and I just really wanted to like tell my own stories, and I basically taught myself programming. That's a big reason why I make visual novels. They are something I enjoy. They're not maybe my favorite game genre, but they're a lot easier to program. So it's a good way for me to like illustrate, do my animations in an easier engine. Yeah.
Wow. That's the way you sort of broke into this space is so interesting, because you started with graphic design and you learned a lot by just interacting with so many projects. You were observing so many games being made, and that gave you a special kind of experience, didn't it?
I think so, yeah. I sometimes get people asking me like, oh, what's your experience? I want to get into game dev as well. And it's a bit tricky. Like I can say, oh, go on Steam, play a load of games, maybe play some back games, get an idea of games, of why some games have been successful and why some haven't. But it's really hard when you don't see the kind of the back end of it. If you don't see how the game started and did it get much better over time, like did the developer get everything right, or did they have difficulties? It is a very fortunate position, and I didn't realize it at the time, that I could see how some games were succeeding and others weren't. And it is still, there's a lot of luck involved. There's still always going to be luck involved.
Right.
But when I launched One Night Stand, like it did do really well. It wasn't like a huge Undertale or a Stardew Valley or anything, but it was a success. And I felt like my experience, if I didn't have that experience, that wouldn't have happened.
So, surprising no one, One Night Stand and Videoverse are probably a little bit different story-wise. Can you talk about the process of writing the story and dialogue for One Night Stand, and how is it different from Videoverse?
Yeah, so with One Night Stand being made for a game jam, it was, I just didn't have much time. So you're allowed to like prep for NaNoWriMo. So I'd spent like a month on it. And I just had to come up with an idea really quick. And then when I was thinking about it one morning, I just saw this like drunk guy on a tram. he looked quite ashamed. I started thinking like, oh, has he had a one night stand? This looks like a walk of shame kind of thing. And I was like, I don't know if that's a great idea, but this thing is like coming up and I need an idea. So I just kind of like dived in. I was like, well, it's funny. I think it's funny. It's full of drama. So let's just run with this and see what happens. And then whilst writing it, it was like, oh, what if I added this? What if, the guy picked up the wrong underwear, or what if he got caught wearing the wrong, wearing her underwear? What if you got caught like trying to get out of the place? Like, what if she sees you? And all these things. I had to like chop off at some point some of these ideas because they were just there was just too many of them. It's like, well, what if like the guy opened the window and jumped out or something? And it was initially for a game jam, so it's like, okay, I have to just keep it to just a few ideas. And that also, because it had that initial game jam release, that was something I didn't get with Videoverse. I would watch like YouTubers, people playing it, streamers, and they would say things and I would really like observe what they were doing. And some people, like for example, one guy takes the photo of her when she's naked and you only see like her back. And the guy was like, oh, why is she so upset? It's just her back. It's not a big deal. And I was like, oh, I never thought of it like that. Because if someone put a photo of me online, like even if it's just a normal photo, without asking me, I'd be a bit upset.
Right.
But this guy was like, oh, it's not a big deal at all. So I was like, right, well, some people playing this might not think it's a big deal. So I put that option in there. I was like, you can argue back with her, like, oh, it's just your back. Why are you getting so upset? And then, of course, if you say that, she gets really mad at you. So I had that advantage of being like, it's almost like a soft launch for a narrative game before people really did that. And I was just very observant, and I was like, I really want to add things that people will feel their choices are really reflected here. Whereas Videoverse was like a longer development time, 3 years in total, and I think I got most of the story done in like the first year. But I'd be playing it and then thinking, trying to remember that guy and be like, well, what is everyone got the choice here that they want to do? And there's only so much of that you can really do on your own. So, then it goes to like play testers, and it was a much more formal process. I was like, oh, were there any points where you wanted to make a choice where you couldn't? But I think it's different when it's play testers. Generally, people are a little bit more nice than like some random guy who doesn't know you on streaming it. So I just had to kind of do the best in the situation. But I do think like ultimately Videoverse is a much more heartfelt, meaningful, passionate game. It's definitely like One Night Stand was this like almost like a throwaway idea, like it's just a quick thing. Whereas Videoverse is like, I want to tell this very important story about these online communications like being so important, especially for like teenagers, people who are disabled, or people that are stuck at home. I started development of it at the beginning of the pandemic. I think it was like April, May. So I was thinking a lot about like that, just my appreciation for the internet. So it definitely come from like a completely different place to One Night Stand. Right. But I do think both games are like, still have like the kind of heart, or like I try to put a bit of like moral or like advocacy in my games. With Videoverse, it's like ableism and kind of a little bit anti-capitalist messaging. But with One Night Stand, it was more, I was just very concerned. It wasn't too long out of university, and I'd seen a lot of people in like one night stand situations just getting treated quite badly. And I was just very concerned about it. So there was that angle as well. Like it's not just this throwaway, silly idea. It's still coming from a place of like, I want you to interact with this stranger and be very like kind of kind and understand that she's a real person. So yeah, I think both games have like the heart, but they came from totally different places.
Yeah, all that is so revealing. I hadn't even imagined the idea of playtesting a narrative game like Videoverse or One Night Stand. I think of playtesting happening with other genres for sure. But it really goes to show how everybody's mind works differently when you're watching someone who responds to a problem or a situation differently than you. It opens the door to possibilities for the player to make a choice then. And also just how inspiration can come from unexpected places. Like shout out to that drunk guy on the tram. You know, he's out there somewhere.
Yeah.
And he doesn't even necessarily know. He definitely doesn't know that morning he made an impact on the world in a tiny way. That's just wild to me.
Yeah, it's funny.
On the heels of talking about advocacy in games, in a lot of games in recent years, especially in the indie space, we see games represent marginalized groups and underrepresented perspectives. As you have been a game developer for over 10 years, how have you seen the stories of games represent people in that way? And maybe what progress might still need to be made in the space?
So I think we've made a huge improvement in this in the last 10 years for sure. I am a little bit worried though, but I'll get to that in a little bit. We've definitely seen much more like diverse like races of characters, especially in like visual novels. Like I am playing Date Everything at the moment, and it has a very wide cast of people. And I have seen like some fair criticism of it as well. Like, oh, you know, it's very much introducing people to certain races like they've never heard of people from Africa, for example. So I think like there's a lot of effort, but maybe some of these things are still not fully executed brilliantly. However, there are other games that when I think of one, Vemba, for example, about Indian immigrants, and it's all about cooking. And I believe that was made from a team with that background.
Yes.
And that's something you would never have really seen 10 years ago, at least not to this kind of popularity and scale. And I thought that was a fantastic game. And when it comes from people who've lived that experience, then I'd love to see it. I really, really love that game. And there's been like, you know, several other games like that recently as well. Some that I haven't played, unfortunately, because I never have time. But like definitely, and more like there's more stories told by women as well. It seemed like maybe some of the cozy games, for example, like it feels like a bit of a movement almost, like to push back against games typically being for men or violent. However, I do feel like sometimes we can get a little bit stuck. Maybe at the moment it feels like cozy games, for example, are all maybe kind of copying each other or doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And then there's also, I think my biggest concern right now is the kind of pushback with the payment processors and how they've stopped games with any sexual or queer representation. And it's very concerning because I think it goes beyond just like non-safe for work games. I think there's a lot of safe for work games that are queer that are also getting hit by this. And I think we've made so much progress, and it's so sad to see. It feels like a very big step back. And I think it's very damaging as well because the developers that tend to be behind these games are also more marginalized. They tend to be like women or queer identities. So that is something that I am very concerned about at the moment. I'm also concerned because my next game, which I haven't announced yet, but that has very queer themes. And it's reaching a point where I'm like, oh, I've been working on this for like a year and a half. Is this going to be for nothing? Is Steam going to reject it? Is itch.io going to reject it? It's very, very concerning. And it's sad because I want to, I don't think there are enough stories like this. There have been many more over the 10 years or even longer, but I still don't think there's enough. And there's definitely not enough that have a really big budget. I always see some really nice games, but they're usually very small budgets because publishers or investors don't really want to take the risk on games made by women or marginalized people or queer people. And yeah, I think there's still a lot of work to be done, but things are better. than they were.
It's when you look at the whole 10 years, it's easy to see that progress overall. But yeah, things definitely aren't perfect. And a lot of these teams that come from these very particular backgrounds, the teams that should be making these stories, a lot of times my understanding is that they put a lot of resources, a lot of their own resources, a lot of their free time into making these projects. And that might be the one solid chance that they ever get to make a game. And so if they're at that disadvantage, that's really unfortunate for the possibility of their future, of their gameography. You know, they might not be able to make a second and a third game if their project is rejected by a certain marketplace. So thanks for talking about that. That's very revealing.
What we're saying is that we need to destroy the allmother of these payment processors and build a rogue one.
Tying it into the game. Love it.
Exactly.
So what other visual novels and other narrative-focused games have made a big impact on you?
Obviously, the game that I've picked, 1000xRESIST, but we will talk about that in a bit. If I look more at visual novels, there's Virtue's Last Reward, which was the first of the nonary games that I played. So there's 999, Virtue's Last Reward, and Zero Time Dilemma. So I love all those games, but Virtue's Last Reward was the first one that I played, and I still think it was the best one. It's another, like 1000xRESIST, as another like sci-fi. You've got time jumps going into different timeline, you know, all kinds of like crazy things going on. And it was my first like Kotaro Uchikoshi game that I played, and he's like one of my favorite game developers now, because I really love how whenever there's like a timeline, he kind of uses that as part of the story. Like there's a reason why you're like jumping between like different choices and things, and that's part of the narrative. That was just the first time I'd seen something like that, and it really like blew me away. But the other visual novel that means a great deal to me is The House in Fata Morgana, which is very highly rated on Switch, at least. I think it was one of the highest Switch games for a while. And that's a story set in this like eerie, spooky house over like 1,000 years, another 1,000-year game. But there are lots of different stories in this house that involve, there's always like this maid that never seems to age, and this girl with white hair who always comes back to the house but is like being reincarnated. And there's just tells like several different stories, and then about the halfway point, all of these stories start to come together as to why they're linked. And I think it's just one of the smartest narrative games I've seen. That it's a very static visual novel, and there's also not that many choices. It's almost a linear visual novel, but for it to tell so much like emotional story with just like still images and characters, you know, a very good soundtrack, but quite a limited soundtrack for the length of the game, and it's very impressive how much they did with so little, I think. So I really recommend that one. It has, again, I can't really spoil it, but it has a really beautiful emotional takeaway from it. I think if you liked Videoverse, I'd like to think he's like that as well. But it has a very like gothic art style, so it is very different.
Instant wish list based on what you've said. So yeah, thank you.
It is you have to be very patient with it. Give it like 10, 15 hours. But at that point, I mean, I'm hoping it will grab you, because that's the point for me where I was like, I can't stop.
Well, like knowing that from a recommendation, that little caveat, knowing that up front definitely helps to keep me invested if I start.
I think so, because I was about 5 hours in myself, and I'm not into horror games that much, and the second story is quite dark and horrific, and I nearly gave up on it. I was like, I don't think I can get through this, but I'm so glad that I did.
Okay.
It's kind of a life-changing game. I really liked it.
Wow. Oh, wow. Okay. We talk about games on our show as sometimes changing our DNA. Mm-hmm. So it sounds like that has the possibility to change us forever in a small way. Cool.
Absolutely.
This is a fun question we like to ask any game dev we talk to, but as a game developer, what's one tool or source of inspiration you rely on that some people might be surprised by?
Yeah, I found that this was the question that I found quite difficult to think of an answer for.
Okay.
Because like the guy on the train in the morning, I kind of just get inspiration from anything. I
Shower
just
moments.
kind of,
That's what
yeah.
I call them. Shower moments. Yeah.
I'll just, if I'm just in the right train of thought, I can find anything interesting. So I thought it was difficult because it's also, are you realizing that this is inspiring you consciously, or is it kind of subconscious? Because I realized one of the characters in Videoverse, who is also in one of my other unfinished projects, that she's just a small character, but in my lore, she has quite a deep story. And all these years, I was like, oh, I don't really know where she came from. She's just there. And then I was reading one of my shoujo manga that I read when I was a teenager. I reread it, and I was like, oh, she's really like a lot like this character. That's where that came from. And I had totally forgotten about it. So I get surprised myself sometimes, like, oh, like that's where that inspiration for that person or that setting or whatever it is. But with Videoverse, for example, it was very clear, like when I played Miiverse, or when I took part in Miiverse, and that was very conscious. I was like, oh, this platform, this deserved like a proper send off. It was really sad that Nintendo closed it down. And now, Twitter and social media is all kind of scattered. And I really wish it was still around. So, I wanted to make this game. And that was a very, strong, this is inspired by, and also a bit of a thank you to Miiverse. So, yeah, I don't know how to answer that any better than that, I'm afraid.
I think that was very satisfactory. That was very great. A lot of what we experience, it can burrow into our minds and we don't even know we're tapping into that sometimes.
Exactly.
I think is what that shows.
And sometimes it just pops out in strange ways and you've no idea until, I don't know, a decade later when you reread that book or whatever.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I want to thank you for telling us about One Night Stand and Videoverse. But we want to know, what are you looking forward to doing next? Whether as a game developer, we know you mentioned you have a project you can't really talk about, but what else are you looking forward to doing game-wise, for dinner, whatever?
Well, it's a good question. I am looking forward to my next project. I'm very much looking forward to announcing it because it's been a while. And the game is in my eyes, is quite far along, but it is missing some key things like a title, for example. And without that, I can't get very far. So I need to settle on that. And it is also missing music, so I'm looking forward to getting that as well. I'm also working on something else, and the Japanese Videoverse localization as well. So I want to get that out to a wider audience. On more personal things, I've just started playing Pirate Yakuza, and I am a big Yakuza fan, and I'm usually playing them on day one. But for some reason or other, this year, I'm just really behind on games. So, I'm looking forward to playing more of that. And later, at the end of the year, hopefully going to Japan for Christmas. But that is that's quite off topic at this point. But I do love retro game hunting in Japan, and very bizarre visual novels that I can find. My Japanese isn't perfect, but I can understand a little bit. So it's really nice to find these really niche and strange artifacts out there.
Yeah, Japan seems to have a much larger well of visual novels.
Yeah.
Are there any that you've played that you would recommend that might seem like a more universal experience, even though they're sort of relegated to this one region of the world?
The one that I really like is on the Saturn, which is the Revolutionary Girl Utena visual novel, because that's one of my favorite animes, and there's a visual novel of it that's on the Saturn, and it's really, really cool. And of course, I think Tokimeki Memorial is a classic, but there's also Tokimeki Memorial spin-offs and I'm forgetting the name of it right now, but there's like a like puzzle matching version of it. And all the girls will like kind of like scream and cheer for you. And me and my husband are just obsessed with like playing that head to head. Like it is so much fun. So we're always like, whenever we go there, we're just on the hunt to try and find like any more crazy games.
I love watching haul videos from people who visit Japan, who go game hunting. I've watched a few of those, and I've never been to Japan, but it's a very interesting experience that you just can't get anywhere else. It seems.
It's what's so surprising as well is like these games, they're all secondhand, but they are in beautiful, immaculate condition. Like my Revolutionary Girl Lieutenant game has like stickers in there and like little, almost like top trump cards like of the characters. And they're all like, they're all perfect. There's no like fraying on the edges. The stickers haven't been used. There's a manual. It's just, everything is like so beautifully cared for. So it's an expensive hobby, but I like it a lot.
Okay, well, one last question before we move on to our next segment with you. Can you just tell listeners where they can find your games?
Yeah, One Night Stand's pretty much on anything, whether it's like console or Steam or Humble, GOG games. You can find it almost anywhere. Videoverse is a little bit more difficult. It's just on PC, Mac, and Linux right now, but it is on Steam, Epic Games, GOG, itch.io, and the Steam Deck version. It says it's not verified. Steam just haven't prioritized it, but it works really well on Steam Deck, and I really recommend if you have one, that's the best way to play it.
Perfect. Well, Lucy, thank you so much for telling us about your game development story, your interest in games, and everything else. It's been an absolute pleasure so far. We're not done with you yet, though. We're going to move on to reviewing the game you picked from our list, 1000xRESIST. It is our featured game.
Tell me, Watcher, is there a feeling worth getting incinerated over?
Love your mother and trust in her teachings. Do your duties and carry out your function for a future far from sin or incineration. We're all just flowers in a garden of her making. Soon we'll grow beautiful enough to be worth taking. The All-Mother, she shines so bright, but Mother's glow is not as warm as it had seemed to be, and it feels very far from me, and it feels very far from me.
So 1000xRESIST is a 2024 narrative sci-fi adventure. It was developed by Sunset Visitor and published by Fellow Traveler. The game synopsis from the Steam storefront reads, quote, 1000xRESIST is a thrilling sci-fi adventure. The year is unknown, and a disease spread by an alien invasion keeps you underground. You are Watcher. You dutifully fulfill your purpose in serving the All-Mother until the day you discover a shocking secret that changes everything. So this game has a lot going on story-wise. There are 10 chapters to the game. Each of them is pretty long, and there are lots of themes, lots of characters, lots of different storylines interweaving. So we're going to give the note up top that since this is such a story-heavy game, it's hard to avoid spoilers here and there. So if you want to go into this game completely fresh, we recommend you play the game first. I don't, off the top of my head, have like the how long to beat time. But
the how long to beat, I think, is something like 10 hours,
okay.
At least on the website.
I think when I played it, it took me about 15, but I was like doing everything.
Yeah, and I was probably close to like 12, 13
I would say 10 to 15 hours is a good estimation. So go ahead and experience the game for yourself if you want before continuing on with this episode. I'll set up the story and setting. There's so many ways I could do this. I could really go in depth, but I'm going to go pretty top level. But then if there's anything else either of you want to throw in to help set up the game, please feel free. So I would say that this game cold opens with a pretty dramatic scene. Your character, Watcher, murders a character called the Allmother, and you don't know why. And then we start chapter 1. And the background to this world is that on Earth, an invasion by beings called the Occupants caused a disease that wiped out much of humanity. We fast forward to the future, and Allmother is the creator of this society of clones that live in an underground facility called the Orchard. And they're split into functions that are led by the sisters. The sisters are Fixer, Healer, Knower, Bang Bang Fire, and Watcher, who you play as. And all of them are supervised by Principal. And as Watcher, your function is to see and interpret the memories of the Allmother, which you do through an act of communion. And through communion, you learn more about Allmother's past, who she was before this time, and you learn a 1,000-year secret that kicks off a pretty wild series of events. So I'm keeping it there, but otherwise, we can go to gameplay.
Yeah.
What do we do in this game, DiscoCola?
Yeah, I won't say gameplay is light, but there are only just a couple of inputs you're going to be doing. Most of what you're going to be doing is walking around to find the correct entity of sorts to interact with, whether it be a character or an object or other non-human character. Many times you will have a choice of dialogue options to pick from. And then at times, the game will give you tasks. Some of them will be optional, some of them mandatory to progress the story. When more than one are active, you can check your tasks on a task screen. You also usually have access to a waypoint system, which is super helpful. On Switch, this would be activated by pressing the LB button, and it'll show you all the various optional and mandatory waypoints, even using sort of a color-coded system. So very helpful waypoints in this game. And then lastly, for inputs, occasionally there will be these like sprawling sections of the game where you can kind of like warp, jump to certain locations marked by these like red circles. And it often happens over these like massive pits or chasms when there is either no ground to walk on or when the area is so expansive that walking would be kind of unbearably grueling. So
right.
It's both considerate but also a necessary function to avoid wide open pits.
Yes, definitely. Good observation there.
But that's pretty much it for like active gameplay that you do. It's mostly walking around and talking to things.
Yes, it's very dialogue focused. You're listening to voice acting a lot in this game and also reading dialogue. When it comes to accolades for this game, 1000xRESIST was nominated for all kinds of narrative and debut awards. It won the Peabody Award for interactive and immersive work, which I know the Sunset Visitor team was very excited about. I remember when that happened, they were posting about it, and I think it was just so well deserved. So here we are, over a year later since release. Lucy, you looked at our list of featured game ideas. You picked a short list, and from that list, we picked 1000xRESIST. What about the game stood out to you, and why did you pick it?
So I really wanted to choose one of my favorite like narrative games from recent years. I played it, I think, like just after it launched, and it was like one of my favorite games of last year. I took like a whole week off, basically. I do that maybe like once a year and just like play through like a game, and that was this game. So I got to spend a lot of time with it. But also the director, Remy, he's also a really big fan of Videoverse.
Oh,
that's awesome.
Yeah,
I love that.
And I messaged Remy just the other day saying, "Oh, I'm coming on this podcast. Is there anything you'd want me to say?" And they're just like, just say that I love Videoverse, and I played it in one sitting. It was a fever dream, and it's like I feel almost the same with 1000 times, except I had to play it in a week. But yeah, so yeah, it's just been really, really nice to me. Always like boosting my posts and things. So yeah, really nice person, and it's just really nice to talk about a game that I think it's also a very difficult game to talk about because there's so much going on. There's a lot of like time jumping, character jumping, going all the way back like 1,000 years back to, almost like our time now, the Hong Kong riots, and then this strange future. When I finished playing it, I wasn't quite sure what to make of it, because it's like, well, which part of it do you want to kind of dissect? So I thought it would also be a really interesting game to discuss with you guys.
Yeah, I think it is challenging, but I think we'll each have our observations, and I don't think any review of the game could be comprehensive and complete, which I think is kind of special too.
Yeah.
That everybody could take away something else and maybe focus on a different aspect of the game, a different theme.
It's like a meta incentive to force people into playing the game. It's like, I didn't even cover everything. I can't even speak to this part of the game.
Exactly. And I've now replayed the game. I was noticing different things, or I was focusing on different parts of the story just because I first played it around 7 months ago, I want to say. And I've just replayed it within the past week. And different parts of the story grabbed me this time. I was focusing on new things.
Interesting.
So I think you've requested that one of us goes first with our overall thoughts. So Lucy, you'll go second. We're going to go to DiscoCola first. What are your overall thoughts after playing through 1000xRESIST?
So longtime listeners will know that I'm very much like the move fast, jump and shoot man in games, and I don't always like click with the narrative experience as often or as easily, mostly due to like poor reading comprehension skills probably. But I am pleased to say that I actually really like basically everything about 1000xRESIST.
Amazing. Okay.
Certainly one of the better narrative experiences in gaming I've experienced. So yeah, it's no surprise I was dreading this game. As far as like gameplay that I had seen before, all that I had seen was our communion with Knower, which is a very unique chapter because you're talking to the occupants in a very strange language. And so that stuck in my head, and I'm like, oh, great. In addition to being long and narrative, this is also going to have weird puzzles in it throughout the whole game. And so like I had that stuck in my head. I was like, oh, this doesn't look appealing. And I was worried that I was going to struggle through it. But that wasn't the case. And I actually kind of breezed through that chapter. I kind of like clicked with what was going on in that weird language.
Resonance.
I'm happy to say that the music is really surprisingly good. I wasn't expecting it to really stand out necessarily, but it's very awesome. I'm
a big fan of it.
Yeah, it's so good, and I want to find a place to listen to it more. I think the story is gripping. A lot of times when I'm gaming, I'm multitasking. I have the news in one ear, catching up at the end of the day, and I'm playing video games in the other. But I couldn't do that, not only because I couldn't divide my attention, but I also was just that invested. I just didn't want to pay attention to anything else. It required my full undivided attention. Almost everyone has something I care about. Their character, I think Iris sucks and I think Principal sucks, but even they each have their moments where I'm like, I care about them and I'm invested in how they got to this point. And while I think generally people tend to put too much weight into the nature side of nature versus nurture, this game kind of goes maybe a little bit too far in the other way, where it's like nurture can shape who you are this much.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that balance is quite right, but how else do you make clones be various different characters.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
And I found myself not really connecting with characters in this game. And then it would be 1 or 2 or 3 chapters later, maybe like 6 hours later, that something happens and I'm suddenly sympathizing with this character that I didn't expect to ever sympathize with, just because I'm now seeing something they went through. And maybe part of that I can kind of relate to based on something that's happened to me. Just very, very powerful in that way. And there's something that happens near the end of the game where you're reckoning with a lot of those things sort of all at once. And I think that's when the game really gets powerful.
Yeah. I think the voice performances are awe-inspiring, especially considering like most of the characters are supposed to have the same vocal cords.
Right.
I saw the credits later, and it turns out that there are just like a bunch of different voice actors here. But it's interesting how the same literal DNA can present itself in so many different ways. While I consider clones to only be like a few spots behind time travel in story tropes that lack stakes, I think this game still goes to incredible places, and it takes the inherent ethics question of clones and not only runs with it, but I think makes it like a key part of the story by having All Mother, but then also having Bang Bang Fire, Knower, Healer, and just like the rest of that hierarchy. And then adding another layer by introducing new clone factions in the second half of the game.
Yeah.
So it's taking that like ethical question of clones, running with it, and then just like doing something really creative with it.
Yeah.
And you get the rules like at that point. It's like I understand how this society treats clones and all that. So really fascinating way to approach that I hadn't really seen necessarily in other clone related media.
No, I don't think I have seen that either. Like, it's very unique with the story that it's telling with the clones, especially.
And I'm sure I've mentioned this on previous episodes of Underplayed, but I like sets of things and the color-coded function system as one of the first things I interact with. I'm just like, even if I didn't like the rest of the game, I would have been on board with that. It's just like a weird brain thing, but I love sets of things, especially if they're color-coded like that.
No, yeah, there's a visual branding to this place that's very consistent. Like you could make a brand guideline for the orchard, and you would have the colors and what they all mean, the functions, the roles, the hierarchy, and it's just so consistent. And that really aids in helping the player understand the dynamics of what's going on.
Yeah, it's like a very simple rule set that helps me get invested a lot quicker.
Yeah.
From there, I'll move on to things that I don't love as much. This is probably the biggest one. I don't like navigating the orchard. I think that maybe if the orchard had been designed by the provisional government, which they kind of seem to be a stand-in for a very specific modern government, it probably would have had like quadrilateral symmetry, and maybe it would have been more soulless, but it would have been more efficient to navigate. So I would have appreciated that version of the orchard.
Yeah, it is perplexing. My understanding is that this design is intentional. It's supposed to emulate this feeling of navigating places like Hong Kong, which we see in the story, and places like Tokyo. But it's nonetheless frustrating. And I found myself, even on replay, I was still getting lost, and I was still having to pull up in the map and trying to see the two halves of that map. It is challenging.
Yeah.
And I had the same thing, and I could never get the hang of it. I think they have added a map in an update, because I don't remember that being there when I first played it. But even with the map, I still found it really difficult. And even the way marker, it's still like, are they up or down? No matter how many times I've run around, I just never seem to know where the staircase is, or it's rough.
Yeah, I think specifically of a path that runs through the middle next to some glass panels, and there's some plants, like some foliage and things.
Yes.
And I always think that that's going to lead me to one side of that area, but I actually have to go to the outer rim and find a different entrance. I always get those two paths mixed up. I was usually able to use the map to help me out in that spot. But when we look at the levels, like the levels 1, 2, 3, that's where I can sometimes do a lot more trial and error to find where I'm going.
Yeah. So it's rough, and I won't go so far as to say it's like intentionally padding out the length of the game, but there were times where I'm like, there could be stairs here, or this could go all the way around.
And there are the optional tasks of catch up with all of the shells and all of the sisters in those early chapters.
Yeah.
It does tell you, hey, you have stuff you can talk to all the shells about. And I felt compelled to do that, even though I was getting lost. Like I didn't want to leave any of that behind. They give you a lot of good tidbits in there, but it does kind of feel like it is padding out things for those who want to do the 100% understanding of the story.
Yeah, and I really wanted to do all of that as well, but I accidentally progressed the story so that I missed out on some of it, but I got the gist of it.
Yeah.
Up next, while I do find the story incredibly gripping, I do still have that innate need for a little bit more action. So I can only play this for so long before I'm kind of like checked out, and most of the times when I played this, I did warm up with a run in LC or maybe finished with a run in LC just to like massage that part of my brain. So, I mean, this game kept my attention pretty well, but I did have my limits as far as that goes.
I found when I first played it, I would play 2 chapters at a time. So I had about 5 play sessions with it.
That's roughly how it worked out for me too.
And Lucy, you said you played it over the course of a week. Did you find that you were kind of taking breaks like that?
Yeah, so if I take like a week off to play a game, I'm usually like I'm there, like I'm gonna just sit and play. That's what I'm doing that week. But I think it did take me a little bit longer. Like I was probably doing like an hour or 2, maybe another hour in the afternoon, but then like maybe like a chapter at a time kind of thing.
Yeah, you kind of want that time to think about the current place you're at. I don't think this would be a marathon game for me. On my replay, I actually did play 4 or 5 chapters in one day.
Yeah, I saw that
wow.
Bluesky post.
Yeah, I got to chapter 7 within 24 hours. And I think I was only able to do that because I had such a clear memory of the game to start. And so I was just devouring it on the replay.
Yeah. When I tried playing a little bit of it this week, I did like just the first few chapters, but I, like you, Bo, I felt quite like a little bit more into it, I think, than the first time. Like when you know where the story's going to go, it's kind of hooked you and you're like, yeah, I actually do want to go into the next chapter now. And yeah, so I think when you know what like the payoff's going to be, it is quite compelling.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And then lastly here, in the few instances where I do have choices, it doesn't seem to mean much in a more, at least immediately recognizable way like it is with Peter. But then at the end of the game, where my choices do matter, there are just like so many different combinations and variables that I don't really have the patience to try them all. And at this point, I don't really know what I would call a good ending is. And I don't know that I have the patience to go through to even figure out what my favorite ending is, if there is like how all those variables play out.
Yeah, my understanding is there are several endings. I still have only seen one. I don't have that experience to draw from. So how I feel comfortable there is knowing that maybe the ending that I got, I'm focusing more on like those choices I was making and trying to imagine what the future looks like from there. That's sort of where I sit with the ending and how it satisfies me.
Okay. So I looked up a lot of different endings online because I tried 3 different scenarios. And so technically, I haven't seen the credits to this game. I haven't beaten this game because all 3 endings that I tried do not deliver credits. So
interesting.
I did look up some of the other endings, and I don't know that I had not looked that up, I would have taken the time beyond what I'd already seen.
Sure.
Maybe if we didn't have a podcast, I'd be like, okay, what if I turn this one on and turn this one off and then find out just by process of elimination. But that's where I stand with it right now.
Interesting.
So yeah, this game was something I was dreading, but it wormed its way into my good graces. And if a game pulls my undivided attention, then that means it's doing something pretty incredibly powerful, and that's what I got here. This is one of my favorite narrative experiences in the games that we've played for Underplayed, and I would watch the hecky out of a 1000xRESIST limited series. Like, seriously, if that came to Kickstarter or something, I would back the heck out of it.
Totally.
If I live in a world where 1000xRESIST is a video game or it doesn't exist, I pick a video game. But if I live in a world where 1000xRESIST is a video game or a limited series, I might pick the series if I'm honest, because I think this is a really incredible sci-fi story. And at the end of it, my only significant pain point really is navigating the orchard. I love this game. To score it, I give it a 9.5.
Oh, awesome. Great. I'm so glad you loved it. Lucy, you picked a game that Disco loves. That's so great. Would you like to share some of your general thoughts about the game?
Yeah. So I think the first thing that struck me was how the game looks, like the lighting and the rendering. Because this is made by like a smaller team, and the 3D is quite simple. Like the characters like don't have lip sync, but they get so much out of just how everything is shot, how everything is lit. It feels like every frame and angle is like a piece of artwork to me. And I feel like that's why I'm sometimes a little bit overwhelmed by like, I could talk so much just about certain like shots of this game. And I think like a lot of narrative games and visual novels as well could learn a lot from this. I think we're always very used to like having like a background and just a character standing there. And here is like there's so much thought gone into what colors should we use. There's a lot of like, red to blue and shots with like red and blue in them. Certain characters standing in different bits. And it's like there's just so much love and thought gone into like just the camera angles.
Yeah, it feels like Sunset Visitor has members of the team that have real deep experience with cinematography, like specifically as like an art form, as a craft.
Yeah, it's a beautiful looking game. And, when I was like replaying it this week, walking around, when you look at like the textures and things on the 3D, it's really low quality stuff. Like, this is low budget. This is, it was designed to work on the Switch 1. It's not like the most like detailed rendered 3D art you've seen or anything, but they get so much out of what they've got there. I find it very, very impressive. And like Disco said, the voice acting as well, like, and the music. So you've got the visuals looking stunning, and then you've got like, I think like this is some of the best voice acting like I've ever heard in a game. I think it was the first time I played it that really struck me. And I was a bit surprised, like, oh, why have they not got the same voice? But I think that the voices sounded almost similar enough that they did sound like sisters, and they did sound like they had their own kind of personalities. And I think that was probably the point, to make not make them seem too much like clones. Like at this point, 1,000 years later, like things are, these women have like all like kind of branched off in all these different areas and roles. So yeah, I really, really like the voice acting. I'm also like really into narrative stories where it feels like you're kind of going down a rabbit hole. Mm-hmm. So you're like going inside of like the communions, but they feel a bit like a dream almost, or a memory. And you're like diving in and you're watching these things, and you find out halfway through, spoilers, that that it's been, I think you've been playing as Blue the whole time, and you've been like communing and figuring out what Watcher was doing. And it's like, oh, it's like a memory within a memory kind of thing. And I really like that. I know that 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim was an inspiration for this game, and that's another like one of my favorites. It really feels like, oh, you're going down and you think you know what's going on, but you're just scratching the surface. Like, keep going. There's like way more down there for you.
Ooh, I've had that one on my shelf for a while. Now I want to play it even more.
So good. But yeah, like I just think it's 1000xRESIST, just very elegant, very well written, extremely deep lore. Like they have like almost their religion and their language and the way they talk. You know, Hecky Elmo, Hecky Grace. It just kind of throws you in to this world without really any introduction. I think that takes a lot of like guts to do that and pull it off. So yeah, like I'm kind of just like in awe of how it's been crafted. However, my dislikes, as we already mentioned, The Orchard, so I won't talk about that again.
That's going to be on all three of our lists, I think.
Yeah. I think for me, I just tend to prefer games that are a bit more, like maybe emotionally touching. And there are like some very emotional moments. I guess there's like almost too many of them. I find there's so much going on. I kind of don't know what to focus on. And it's like perhaps there isn't like time to pause on something that is really emotional, that is maybe quite upsetting. I do like a game that like makes me cry or like really gets like some emotion out of me, and it didn't do that. So that's only my criticism, I think. And I think that's just a me thing. But it is still a thing of like, I think it's really well designed. I'm not that fussed about there not being too much action or puzzles or anything. I really like the Life is Strange games, and just walking around and talking to people is usually enough for me. But yeah, it didn't quite like hit me right in the feels, and I think that's just dependent on who you are, really.
Yeah.
Well, I highly recommend to you my secret game for today, which I kind of want to leave you in suspense, even though the listener already knows it. But I'll send it to you after.
Okay, cool.
All right, awesome. And then are you ready to assign a score to the game out of 10?
Yeah, so I would give it a 9 out of 10.
Nice. Very good. Yeah, one of your favorite games from last year. That's no surprise. And
Yeah.
I find myself agreeing with a lot of what you each said. I have now replayed the game, and I appreciate so much about it even more. This might be a game I want to revisit again in maybe a year or two, and I think I would notice new things. And I might talk about this later, but I was noticing little details, little foreshadowing moments in early chapters that would have been just totally over my head in the first play that I did. And so there's a lot of thought, a lot of thoughtfulness in leaving those breadcrumbs and just kind of having all these through lines that intersect and weave. And I think this story is so wholly unique. There's so much to think about and take away. I agree with both of you that the voice acting is superb. There are tons of dramatic and committed performances. And on the topic of the vocal cords sort of diverging a bit, that point specifically reminds me of listening to old recordings of myself. Lucy, Disco, and I used to do a radio show here at the station where we're recording. We first did that over 10 years ago now. And I go back and listen to some of our recordings, and I find that my voice sounds different. And I think that that can kind of show that, you know, maybe just physically we evolve over time, and so our vocal cords are going to change. But I also think how we carry ourselves, what we think about ourselves, what we might be going through at a certain time, that can affect our voice. And so those little touches make me think about the human experience too.
I still record a lot of the announcements around here, and it'll just depending on the week, you know, can jump back and forth between different sounds.
Yeah, definitely. I listened to a film podcast that's been going on for, I think, around 15 years. And the host has said that he doesn't like listening to his old episodes from the early years because he had a lot of sinus stuff and he just sounded different. He doesn't really like putting those episodes out there anymore. Just fascinating. I love that idea of how the voices can differ. Very tiny point, but just wanted to sidetrack on that.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. I also love that the game has so much personality and this manner of speaking. You mentioned a lot of these, Lucy, like Hecky Grace, the roles of the sisters and what those each mean, what their responsibilities are, the nature of the occupants and how they use memory and then the idea of communions. All of it is so interesting and has a lot of texture. And there's this idea of show, don't tell. We see that a lot in movies where instead of doing an exposition dump, show us the details of the world. I actually think this is a game that really succeeds in showing and telling. I think immediately you're shown a lot in the orchard and other places, but then also you're just told. They're speaking in this way, and you don't always know what's going on. But I found that, especially in the replay, there were plenty of opportunities to get that context. I just needed to know where to look. So a lot of the vernacular of the place that confuses me at first, Nowhere has a little section, a little area with all of the purple shells. You can talk to one of she's kind of a librarian. She'll give you these explanations for a lot of these sayings if you take the time to look. And so it's one of those games that gives you more the more you explore and the more you dig, which I always really appreciate. I find that every chapter is distinct too. I always love that in chapterized games. You can look at any chapter and you can know, okay, chapter 1 is where we're exploring that school. Chapter 2 is in the first person. It's a very different perspective. And we're going back through Iris's early life. We're seeing stuff about her parents. Chapter 8 is this entirely like 2.5D side-scrolling level that's so unlike everything else. So every chapter, you can look at it and you can immediately know where you are in the story, what's going on, and it helps you segment things in your mind as you're piecing together things. So you get a totally different experience all the time in this game. And also the game is just super surprising. You'd never know at a certain point what it's going to throw at you. I stopped guessing what was going to happen after like chapter 3 or 4 because I realized, okay, there's no way I can even ever be close to right. So I'm just going to let this game take me on a ride. And chapter 6 onward in particular, like really changes things up. So I love that too. I have several dislikes as well. I find that with all the events of the story, my awareness of things, the temporal order and organization of things can feel a little bit scattered. It's hard to keep the events straight in my mind sometimes as far as like sequences of things. And sometimes I don't know how much time has passed between events. They might tell you later, but there are times where I am so disoriented that I feel like I'm also trying to pay attention to what's being said to me, but I'm also trying to catch up, if that makes sense. Yeah. So it can kind of be a lot. And that's also contributing to my need to take breaks, honestly. It can kind of be a heavy story. It can be a lot of information to absorb. But then the organization of the story can require me to just need to take a break, think about it, let it percolate in my mind. I found too that there are groups and factions throughout the story that might have deserved a bit more attention. So I'm thinking of like Bartender's Friends, the gang that Chris runs from Old Town.
Yeah. When I got to the ending, those were the two that I'm like, I don't really even remember where I met you.
Yeah. And
same.
On my replay,
I had the same.
You had the same thing happen, Lucy?
Yeah, like when they said Chris, I was like, wait, who's that? And it, you know, at the end, it's this choice, and you're like, I don't really know. I guess I'll just leave the light on.
So sometimes you're making these choices that are sort of half informed. On replay, I'm noticing that they're bringing these characters up in a special way to help reinforce them in my mind. So I get what they're doing, but I still feel like I want to know more about the characters. And I guess that's kind of a compliment too, that I just want to know more about all the factions here. There are also the people, the religious factions that you do get a taste of, but maybe a little bit more could have been told there.
Yeah.
I also find that, like you said, Lucy, there can be a lot of emotional moments, but also a lot happening at once. And so it can feel a bit scattered, and it can feel a bit difficult to focus on what I should be focusing on. But that's going to hit different for every player, depending on your personal experience. And then the point about navigating the orchard, that persists from my first play to my replay for sure. But overall, I think 1000 Times Resist is such a surprising and textured and ambitious piece of science fiction. Replaying it has me even more in awe of what it does. I'm going to rate it a 9 out of 10.
Alrighty.
Like Lucy. So all of us love it. All of us had a great time. When we look at the game, it's definitely a narrative first experience. And so I want to go to the storytelling and the style of 1000 Times Resist. What is making this game significantly different than other games? I know we've touched on this a little bit, but is there anything specifically that jumps out at you, especially when you think back to all 10 chapters?
Yeah, so I think I mentioned it a bit before with the cinematography. I don't think there are that many games that really take it to this level, particularly of this like size and scale and budget. Even a AAA game is more shot like a film or a movie. When I think of like maybe The Last of Us, great game, but it's very much conversational, very realistically looking, very realistically lit. Whereas here, it's just so striking, and it has this visual style like pretty much across like the whole game. Even when you're looking at things in the past that happened when Iris was still like a young teenager living with her parents, it still has this kind of haze about it, and I think that's really, really striking. But I'm really interested to know what you guys think.
So for me, immediately the thing that stands out in my mind is that especially when we're doing communions, and then again in like chapter 8 or 9, we use that ability to jump forward and backward through different time periods. And that's a really interesting way to keep you in the same room, keep you in the same setting, so you don't have to do all that walking or whatever, but still deliver a timeline of events. And so I think that's the first thing that pops into my head that is kind of different from anything else I've experienced before.
Yeah, the time jumping, I noticed something this time that I breezed past it when I first played, but in chapter 7, I believe, you do a sequence of jumping through times and you see a character standing in front of something. I'm just going to keep it vague. And then you time jump forward and there's a character in that exact same spot and they're standing in front of something else. And then you time jump again and there's another character standing in that same spot looking over something else. And it's showing over the course of so much time, cause and effect, I think, is what's going on here. And I found that super powerful. I was cycling through all of them and it's the same framing. It's the same stage picture that we're seeing, but who is occupying the picture changes over time. And in a moment, it wordlessly shows you cause and effect. As I found just that small moment. I don't see that with time jumping in other games. Usually when I'm time jumping or, switching time periods, there's a very drastic change. And sometimes it's just a subtle change that really grabs me in this game. I would also say striking is a great way to explain how the storytelling feels. And I think it can happen just with camera angles and hard cuts to help.
Yeah.
To help.
That's so, because when I played it again this week, I made a note of that. Like the hard cuts, I didn't really notice it the first time I played, but there's so many of them. And usually, most games like will fade out or it'll be really gentle. I don't think I've seen a game use hard cuts as much or as well as this one does.
And there's something,
very impressed.
There's something subtle about that, I think. When something hard cuts and we see, maybe it feels like something's cut short. And so there's a conflict there. There's a sense of unease in the player. Like I didn't get to see everything, or I feel like I'm on a cliffhanger a bit, or we jump to something that's completely unexpected. It adds a feeling of suspense, maybe.
Yeah, for me, it's like I am no longer in control of that situation that I just hard cut away from, so I can't control its outcome.
Definitely.
And it makes me kind of like nervous, scared. Like
yeah. And it just gives you that.
It's like you're on edge the whole time whilst you're playing it.
That feeling that anything could happen is persistent because of style choices like that, for sure. And I would just also add that the game loves to subvert your expectations and keep you guessing. Chapter 6 onward, you're going to places you could never predict because you don't realize the scope. You don't know the boundaries of the place. So,
and the rules change drastically at that point too. But so next up, how did our experiences or expectations evolve throughout the story? I know Bo said that he kind of like gave up after a while expecting anything. But how about you, Lucy?
I think the first time I played it, I had a similar kind of experience. Like, I don't really know where this is going, especially like after chapter 5. You think like, we're pretty much going to wrap up now, right? Like we've seen how this started, and it's like this is more like a prequel or an introduction. The first 5 chapters, and then it's like, no, we're gonna keep going. And I was a bit like, at first I was a little taken aback, like, I thought this was going to end. Like, I'm not sure where this is going to go now. And that at this point, you're in like unknown waters. Like, who is Blue? What is this old town underneath the orchard? Like, what is all this? Why are there so many miscellaneous here? So yeah, like at that point, it felt like the rug had been pulled a bit.
Yeah, a lot of what was surprising to me were little things. And I look at the pitch for the game, I look at the story setup, and I think it's going to be this heavy, highly emotional story, and it is. But I was also taken aback by how funny it can be, in usually a dark way. It'll happen in dialogue, but also just passing moments, just moments you might miss. Running through the orchard, you'll hear shells having these side conversations. Because they have moments where they're talking about current events, and they'll just say these like really catty comments about you or someone else. And it's like, whoa. And I always laugh at those because it's like this gossip that's happening. And you think, that probably would happen in a place like this where there's a lot of drama. And there's a purple shell that overanalyzes everything. And I just, every time I interacted with her, I was laughing too. So and then there are times where a character will just say something so brutal in such a smart way, in such a brilliant way, that can be funny too, even if they're like kind of taking down another character. So yeah, that's something that I would note as surprising.
I think for me, my expectations evolved the most in regards to like certain characters. So I knew pretty early on that I wasn't going to love Iris for most of the game, if not all of it. But like, I would say that in most cases, when I was like pretty sure I knew how I felt about a character, something would happen, maybe way, way down the line, and it would just be like, oh no, I actually really like this character. And even like sometimes the needle would move a little bit and then later it would move a lot. And I'm thinking specifically of like Healer. Early on, I'm just like, I don't really care about Healer. And then the needle moves a little bit during Communion. But then later on, I'm just like, oh no, Healer's great. I love Healer so much. So I thought I felt a certain way about her, and I was just like wrong. And certain characters are more complex in that way, like Knower and Knower's full storyline. And you're allowed to feel a lot of different ways about her depending on who you are.
Definitely.
So she gets to be a little bit more ambiguous.
I remember at the end turning the light on and off and on and off on, I think it was Knower, like multiple times. I kept going over to her lamp and I'd turn it off and I'd be like, well, hold on. I'd go over to Secretary and I'm like, I'm ready to lock this in. And Secretary's like, are you sure? It's so it's so perfect how they do it. They know that you're probably going to have second guesses about things. And I turn around 180 degrees and I'm like, oh, she's all the way down there. Let me go down there. And I turn it on and I turn it off and I turn it on. So yeah, there are so many gray areas with the characters.
And can I make a note about that moment that I still don't think spoils anything? their specific word choice is, will you carry this?
I know.
And that's
I know.
like such a heavy way to phrase that question.
It is. And just, I love the writing in that section specifically. The way they describe the implications of carrying something forward, carrying a group of people forward.
Like a hammer when it's needed and when it's not. It's
so
like
good.
so dope.
So poetic. Yeah.
Yeah. I am very much in awe, like, as a, a visual novel writer, like how well the writing is and how heavy it is, not just in that scene, but in pretty much every chapter. It's so beautiful. It's like, as I was saying with the shots before, even like all the words have been like really thought out. It's so beautifully designed.
Yeah, it feels like whoever was responsible for the writing was really closely involved with the environment, and whoever was responsible for crafting like the spatial placement of things. Everything feels so intentional, just in every single chapter. And then this is something I'm so curious about because I was taking away different themes this time. I feel like there are very explicit themes that you could take away. I think there are also implicit themes throughout. What themes of the storytelling were profound to us?
I really liked the story when it was talking about Iris and her parents and how they immigrated to Canada, particularly around the time of the Hong Kong riots. And we see like certain parts of the game, we're running through like a 3D corridor, and then you start seeing like the smoke and the guys with the masks and everything. And it's really well, like the way it comes in like this is really effective. I particularly like the story with the parents though, because I think one of my favorite characters is probably her dad. I can't really like put my finger on why. He just seems quite kind of thoughtful, empathetic kind of character. I think in contrast to like Iris's mum, who is quite, most of the time you just hear her voice through the door.
Yeah.
And I can really sympathize with Iris of like why she kind of wants to get away from them. And like later on, like when they kind of have that reconciliation, like right at the end, where Iris and her mum are both on the stairs, it comes from like a place of parental love. And, I think Iris asks like, how did you do it, Mum? How did you actually like raise me? How did you do it? And she's like, well, your dad was there. I just thought it was just very, very beautiful in this like otherwise quite troubled, difficult family, and they're all like, having a great stress because they've like left their home country and they have to try and make it work. And they have this apartment, which I feel like it's really small by design on purpose. So yeah, like I think that was the part that kind of got to me the most. And I think that Iris's story, being raised in Canada, contrasted very well with Zhao, who moved later and didn't have the kind of, the benefit of like learning English younger, fitting in with the other students, all this kind of stuff. And I think that's quite explicit, it's quite obvious. But yeah, I thought their friendship, like Iris and Zhao, is, at least for me, it was very similar to like a relationship I had with my friend, except I was more in the Zhao position when I was younger. And I was kind of like looking up to her like, oh, I want to be just like you. Yeah. And it just felt very real. So this like friendship that's troubled and this parent-child relationship that's also troubled, but both of them still appreciate. And I think by the end, Iris really kind of loved Zhao. She just was terrible at showing it.
Yeah, there's a lot I think about with generational stuff and what's passed down. And I think there's a lot that's explored with things that you might be very well aware that you're inheriting from a previous generation, but then things that you don't know about, you might never fully comprehend or understand. And I think pain and sort of inheriting pain is something that I took away here. Like,
Yeah.
pain begets pain, wrongdoing begets wrongdoing. We see how someone being in a bad place can cause a ripple effect. It was really hard to watch, and something that made me reflect back on my own life. So we see how Iris was wronged, and then Zhao, and then Youngest, and then a lot more sisters after that.
Yeah.
And so it just makes
It's definitely got that theme of like generational trauma, I think, for sure.
right. And so it all kind of goes back to that immigration and Iris's upbringing and her parents. Like, everything sort of stems from there. So I think showing us that as early as chapter 2 is really powerful. And you mentioned the apartment being so small. There's something extra impactful about those moments often being in the first person, at least in the first, in chapter 2, when we first go there. That being in the first person really puts us in the gaze of being in that place. It's very immersive, and it feels even more sort of claustrophobic. And so you can understand why Iris would want to maybe escape that. And like, here's this reason that's like suddenly blowing up their lives, and she has an out.
Yeah, for sure.
And you can take having it stem from that immigration and consider it coming full circle for another theme that I really enjoyed, which is maybe the most shallow theme, but like the theme of revolution and, resistance to authority.
Yeah.
And that's a theme in the latter half of the game that I obviously enjoyed, but that's obviously more of a shallow enjoyment.
I knew you would love that. Yeah.
It's very explicit and very much in line with how I feel lately. So
yes, definitely. It's a game for our times in a lot of ways.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, definitely.
So what were our favorite characters, favorite story moments? Who and what stands out the most?
I find it difficult to pick a character I don't like, to be honest. I think I really like having a cast full of female characters, because that just doesn't really happen. And I know Disco said he didn't like Iris.
I came to sympathize with her at the end. It did come around a little bit.
She is very mean and nasty, and that is her character. And she isn't necessarily someone I'd like to like hang around with. But I still really connected with her somehow. This like difficulty of like, how do you perform like a mother? How do you do these things? Like, she seems so lost, and she's just trying her best, but she, obviously has these violent outbursts and like kills like quite a few people, or like clones anyway. But when you think about like, she's been kind of experimented on, we don't really know the details of exactly what like the 50 were doing to her, but it mustn't have been that nice. And then she's got all these like little clones going around that she didn't really agree to at the start, and it's just really, I think that's what I find really interesting about this kind of clone story, is like, it is just this like sole human survivor, and she's just a teenage girl, and it really throws her in this situation. So I do have a bit of a soft spot for her. I also have a soft spot for Zhao, because she was treated really badly. But at the same time, you can understand why that Iris wasn't far off being treated the same. And she's like, I just want to fit in. I don't want to associate with you because I want to be accepted. It feels very normal for like a high school like age.
Yeah, it's like Zhao being there in front of Iris. It's like this reminder of what she doesn't want. And so she might not actually feel hatred toward the person. It's hatred toward their situation, but it comes out as just treating them so awfully.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's just this fear of like other people like picking on her or bullying her, and she's like, I have to stay away from Zhao. I don't want her looking like me. I don't want her following me. It's really like quite painful. But then I think the first character I really liked was Fixer. But this is mostly because of like I love the helmet, I love the design of Fixer, and I also really love Fixer's voice actress. I think she has a slightly different voice, and I just really like it.
Fixer is uniquely
I found that
badass,
more recently. If there's a voice actor that I like, I just kind of gravitate towards that character. Like I really like you.
Yeah, there are moments with Fixer where the story just sort of roars to life suddenly. At the end of chapter 7, there's a moment that one of my favorite moments from the game. So yeah, Fixer's in my list too. I would say Iris / Allmother, like just as a very complex character, a character with so many layers, and one that I find myself sort of relating to in more ways than I would have expected. When it comes to like story moments, I was really loving a lot of the foreshadowing moments I referred to earlier. There is a moment in chapter 1 where Watcher is sort of summarizing her learnings, and she reports to Principal that Iris was mean, and Principal just says, yes, she was. And after you know the deal behind Principal, it just, in retrospect, that just 4 words carries so much weight, but you don't know that at first, so it's sort of over your head. So
that's really cool.
I was loving those little moments this time. And then in chapter 7, I thought the game did this really interesting splicing of, there's a character in prison, and we have their perspective, but they fade in and out. And when they are sort of faded out, we see memories of Iris's parents. And on paper, that might sound like very disparate stuff. It might sound like a mismatch, but I found that those two sides actually really complemented each other. And that's another thing where it's like, I didn't expect more about Iris's parents this late into the game, but here we are. And I thought that was super effective storytelling because we're learning about their perspective, but we're also seeing it through this character's subconscious while they're passed out and stuff. Oh, it's just so good.
Really good. I think there's a scene there where the parents are both dancing on the table, and they're dancing. It kind of changes shot, and they keep dancing.
Yes,
and that feels like the best way to rebel against like everything that was going on is like just dance. And it's again beautifully like shot and lit, and it's the kind of scene that I think it stays in my head the most.
Nice. That was powerful too. That's another instance where you're switching time periods, and what you see, there's something familiar, but there's also something new, and the through line is love. It's just very powerful.
For me, I wish I had a more hipster answer than this, but my favorite characters ended up being Blue and Watcher.
Yep.
You get to see Watcher, perceive the world for more of what it really is, and just kind of like shatters this indoctrinated sort of perception. And, generally I think the world could use a little bit more of that. And then I really liked Blue's disposition just in general. And I just really loved Blue and her willingness to get done what she felt was important, that she felt that things were bigger than herself, and that she was kind of working for the betterment of all of clone kind. And I found her character to be really powerful and relatable, but not the coolest answer to that question. But yeah, as far as
I like Watcher a lot.
Yeah.
Watcher's a very nice character to be the protagonist that you play as. I think she's very emotional and feels the emotions very similar to how the player's experiencing it, and in a very kind of empathetic way. I think like maybe that's the point, that Watcher's meant to feel quite relatable. I really liked her.
Yeah,
definitely. Feels kind of like an audience surrogate. Like
Yeah.
Ideally, this is kind of how I would be in this situation, but it's also so hard to imagine myself in this situation too. So, yeah, I also love that answer.
And then for moments, I'm glad you brought up the chapter in the prison, because toward the end of that experience in the prison was a very shocking moment with Noah, and I kind of forgot about it, but now that you've reminded me, I'm like, I can't believe this is where we got to, kind of. So it's just like, wow, unreal. But yeah, the communion with Noah in chapter 5 was a memorable one for me, just because it's so weird compared to most of the other ones. And, conversely, chapters where we're interacting with the occupants, because they're just such strange aliens. And so just like experiencing them is interesting.
There's such a strange distance between them and the characters of the story. But it's like the occupants don't even care or realize that distance.
Right.
Yeah, they just have no perception of that.
Yeah. It's like a totally different perception of reality, and that's fascinating to me.
Yeah.
I feel like they're the most alien aliens I've really seen, because they're not even really physical. They almost just look like beams of light that have then decided to shape into this headless human.
Mm-hmm.
And what the way you try and communicate with them is just, they're even just trying to figure that out. It goes beyond like what we've seen of aliens in like other films or like games. I feel like, they're a bit of a mystery. Even when you finish the game or replayed it, you're still a bit like, these occupants, like they're really strange. Like, what is their deal?
Yeah, I want more about them. That's actually an expectation that I had early on, is that we would know more about them. And by the end of the story, like there's a lot that's done with them, but I feel like there's a whole story, there's a whole game maybe about them or something.
And there's a whole stretch of the game where it's like, you're not even thinking about them for a while.
And then when they come back, it's like, oh yeah, that's a whole side of this thing too. Wow. Yeah. Incredible stuff. Those are all of our topics that we had. But Lucy, is there anything else you want to say about 1000xRESIST before we wrap up?
I think it's one of the best like indie narrative experiences in recent years. And if you haven't played it, but you've listened to us talk so much about it, you should definitely check it out. It's really well directed and designed. There was one small point that I really liked where I think it's in chapter 6. So you're in Old Town, and I think it's just after Bartender is shot. You walk away as Blue, and the quest log that you've seen throughout the game that's usually saying like, oh, it's optional, you can go and talk to Healer, or you should go and talk to Noah now, or whatever. That just fills up with like hate. It's like, go do this. Actually, no, go speak to Chris. Actually, no, don't speak to Chris. Go shoot someone, go get a gun or whatever. And it just fills up with like all these angry thoughts. I'm like, I love it when games kind of break out of their kind of frame almost and like jump into the UI or almost out of the screen. I really liked, seeing that again. I'd forgotten that had happened. So yeah, like it really like pushes the boundaries in like so many different ways, and it's just a feast, really. It's great.
It is. That's such a good way to put it. Absolutely. A lot to chew on with the game. Lucy, thank you endlessly for helping us review it, and also for talking about yourself so much earlier in the episode. We really appreciate it. One more time, could you tell us where to find your games?
Sure. So my games are on Steam. One Night Stand is on all platforms. If you want to keep in touch, the best way is on Bluesky or Mastodon. I'm there as Kinmoku. But also a really cool way, if you want to keep up to date with my games, I have a newsletter. My website is kinmoku.games. And whenever I've got like an update, or sometimes I do giveaways, that is the best way to see what I'm up to. And thank you so much for inviting me and talking about this incredible game, because it is a meaty game. There is so much to talk about with it.
Yeah, there is. It feels like maybe we've just scratched the surface, but yeah, every review is special in its own way. Everybody takes away something else, and it was great having your perspective here too. So thank you again, Lucy. We wish you all the best luck going forward with your next game and everything else. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Well, that is our review of 1000xRESIST. You can play it on PC and Switch. Lucy rated it a 9. DiscoCola rated it a 9.5. I rated it a 9. That's the end of this episode of Underplayed. You can find more of our episodes at kzum.org/underplayed and on common podcast platforms such as Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Our music was composed by Jack Rodenberg. Our art comes from Onimochi. Check out our show notes where you can find and follow us across social media. Underplayed is on Bluesky, Instagram, and Threads. You can also find my links down below.
And I am at DiscoCola in many of those places as well. And hey, Underplayed is on Twitch as Underplayed Podcast, where by the time this episode's out, we've probably finished Human Fall Flat, I hope. But we also premiere early our episodes the night before their proper release.
Yes. And next time we will have 2 more secret games to review. Our featured game will be Human Fall Flat, a puzzle platform game developed by No Breaks Games. And until then, everyone, keep on playing.